Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, April the 19th, and welcome to our video commentary. Today, we're going to talk about the elections in Mexico, the presidential election in Mexico that will be happening in early July, so roughly 2.5 months from Election Day. As we've mentioned before, there are three people running, three major candidates. There's like 10 or 12 candidates, but three major candidates who are probably going to get between them almost 90% of the popular vote. They are Mr. Lopez Obrador, who comes from the left, Mr. Anaya, who represents the PAN. That's been a center-right party, and then Mr. Meade, who would be more of a centrist candidate. He comes from the incumbent PRI. He has a connection to the incumbent president Peña Nieto. So those are the three men who are running. One of those three men is going to be the president of Mexico or the next president of Mexico. Now, at the moment, if you look at the polls, the left-wing candidate, Mr. Lopez Obrador, is leading in the polls. But again, I'm not sure how seriously you can take these polls because I still think the situation is very fluid. When you look at the polls, they're like 32, 27, 22, numbers like that I think will probably change as we get closer to Election Day and as the campaign becomes even more intense than it already is. Also, they have not had debates, and I think the debates could play an important role in determining where a lot of the undecided vote goes. But what's interesting to me is that, when you talk to people in Mexico, and I have the opportunity to talk to many people in Mexico all the time, what you hear from them, the issues that you hear from them, are basically three issues. They want something done about insecurity, personal insecurity. There's way too much crime in Mexico. They want something done about corruption. They feel that there's too much systematic corruption. And then they want something done about, obviously, the economy. They want more jobs created. They want the poverty levels to be reduced, and so on. Now, there is also talk about President Trump. Obviously, President Trump is not popular in Mexico, but I think the impact of President Trump is exaggerated. I don't think he's as big of an issue in the election as sometimes we think he is. Now, the problem is that none of these three candidates are talking about those three issues. They're not focusing on them. And I think that's creating a real frustration with the voters. Because insecurity, let's take personal insecurity. Look, Mexico has had a huge homicide rate now for the last few years. Now, we always hear about this related to the resorts, Cancun or whatever. But a lot of the insecurity is right there in the towns and cities where people live. And what I mean by insecurity is somebody stealing a purse or somebody breaking into your home, that kind of insecurity. There's also a great frustration with corruption. But not so much corruption in the sense that politicians are getting rich. The corruption is more in the system. The system, I think, tends to favor people who are connected to the system. And I think a lot of Mexicans feel like they're not really a part of the system. They're not connected, so they don't get any support from the system. And then, of course, the economy, even though the Mexican economy, you would argue, is doing better than other economies around the world, there is still a sense that it could be doing better, that it could be creating more jobs, and so on. So these three issues, insecurity, the economy, and corruption, I think are the leading issues, but they're not getting the attention from the three candidates who will be, one of those will be the president of Mexico. So I don't know who's going to win, but I will recommend to one of the three candidates that if they want to win, they need to address those issues: insecurity, corruption, and the economy. And if they can talk about that, I think they probably have a chance to connect with enough Mexicans to win what will likely be a plurality of the vote, because none of these guys will get 50%. It'll be more like 35 or 36%. That would be probably the most that any of these three candidates will get to be elected. So we'll keep an eye on this. We've done some shows with our friend Alan Wall. We'll probably do a couple more before the election, and we'll post from time to time and do a video commentary, a couple more probably, at least a couple more before the election in July. But it's a very fascinating election, what's going on south of the border. Very intense, very intense. And for those of us who can remember a time when Mexicans' elections were pretty much decided before people voted, meaning you had one-party monopoly before 2000, it is interesting to watch all the intense campaigning and all the back and forth and all the radio ads and all of the TV ads. I mean, it's like a brand new world down in Mexico. I'm not saying it's better, but it's a brand new world, politically at least, down in Mexico. Thank you for watching. We have all of these over at YouTube. We have them on my Twitter, and we have them on blog. Have a good day, everybody. Talk to you later.